to stand where you are and look at Mr. Loyer's video projection. He will be sharing the flag and we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And there's a hummingbird.
Seriously, what is that noise?
Steve has got his phone and his computer. There you go.
All right. All right, well, with that, let me go back to sharing the, someone can confirm that you're seeing the agenda for me?
Nope.
Yep. There it is.
Okay, took a couple minutes. All right. So a couple reminders. I don't think there's many visitors on, but if anyone is and would like to have the opportunity to address the board where we would normally do our blue cards, please just put a note in the chat window with your name and your topic, and we'll be glad to try to catch that and address it when that time comes up. But for now, everything has to be a roll call vote. So I'm going to make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as stated. Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion? All right, we'll go through the roll call vote. Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Loy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundett?
Yes.
Mr. Pat? Mr. Patch? Did we lose him or is he on mute? All right, well,
Andy, he's on mute. Okay. He's not, okay, not now.
Steve, thumbs up. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Mr. White?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. And with that, we do come to the part in our agenda where if someone wanted to speak to the board, you would put your comments in the chat window. I'm just going to check that real quick. There's nothing in there, so we will dispense with the community open forum and move into our agenda. So I'll make a motion to approve item D in its entirety, which is personnel, instructional, and non-instructional. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by
Second.
Second by Fishman, I think.
Yeah.
Any discussion on this?
I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't hear who second.
Mrs. Fishman.
Me.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. Any discussion? All right, so roll call vote on item D. Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood? Sorry, Mrs. Wood?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Loy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundett?
Yes.
Mr. Patch? Mr. Patch?
Yes.
There you go, thank you. And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
All right, motion
Kansas.
carries. All right.
Chance, did you say something?
Yeah, he skipped over me. I'm a yes.
Oh, I thought I called you. Well, you know. Mrs. Nickerson's a yes too, Pearl.
Okay, thank you.
Now you can get me a gag gift at Christmas. All right, moving on to item E, the consent agenda. I'll make a motion to accept in its entirety. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fishman. Any discussion on E? All right, being none, Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Pat,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Moving into presentation to the board. Tom, none scheduled. Are we doing, I guess we'll discuss and any presentations on the budget at that time?
Yeah, I mean, there was not another budget presentation. The presentation was last week. But again, I'll just kind of recap it if you'd like.
We can do it when we get to it, then that's fine. So for now, we'll go into reports. Any updates on the census or anything that you'd want to convey, Tom?
There has been no updates.
All right. Mrs. Fishman, anything to report?
No, I mean, nothing that everybody hasn't seen. There's been a lot of good feedback about the material pickups at the high school and middle school, but I'm sure most of us have seen that and heard about that, so kudos to them.
Yep, agree. Went really well organized. And again, just all we see is that result of the work, but there's just days of prep that goes into it. So kudos to everyone on that. I'll open up to the board. Any topics that any board member would like to bring up at this time? All right, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay. Second. Well, I want to echo what Christy said. I got a lot of great feedback from some parents, whether it was email or they were telling me during food distribution how smoothly it went at the high school and the middle school. Again, to Andy's point, that's a lot of hard work behind the scenes because I'm CC'd on all of the administrators' emails, and that it wasn't just done overnight. That was a lot of thought that went in that, again, adhering to safety, concerns and whatnot that we followed. I want to also give a huge shout out to Kristen Enright and her whole administrative team for all the students that participated in that and the parents regarding making it a very, very special event when they do their graduation ceremony. She's putting all of that information together and she's in the process of getting it out to all of the senior parents. I think it's going to be amazing, and the professionally done video is going to be outstanding. I do want to say that there's been a lot of talk, and I want to be able to clarify. I was on a Zoom chat with all of the superintendents in the entire region, and Ryan McMahon, county executive for Onondaga County, and he talked about 3 locations, if there was going to be a traditional ceremony, but again, none of that could happen until we go into phase 3. Problem is nobody knows when phase 3 is going to start, if it's even going to start over the summer. So I was very happy that Kristen Enright talked to the students on her committee, and the consensus that they all felt that they wanted to go along with the plan that they had come up with, where there's going to be a stage down on the stadium at Paul V. Moore campus, and parents are going to drive up, students going to get out of the car, walk down, get on the stage, and then do kind of like a victory lap. They wanted to go around the track. This is going to be an 8-hour time slot. You won't know that when you watch the video. It's going to look like it's all one right after the other. But what the students basically said was they want to be able to be in control of a situation where they haven't been in control of it because the governor kept changing everything. So rather than wait and have their hopes pulled away from underneath them, they didn't want to do that. The other part too, I think, is really important, is that whole metrics that's being used, looking at the number of cases compared to the total population in an area, that if that were to be skewed, it could set a region back. And the worry was when it was mass gatherings, that you can't control who comes, obviously. So we have, like any other school district, at least half of our seniors' parents are from 2 different households. Some parents live in Madison County, some live in Long Island, some live in New York City. And it would be trying to figure out, getting everybody together. You could very well have people that would be at a mass gathering that could have COVID. And so, in thinking about that, if we did something that then skewed the numbers, it could set our businesses and whatnot in our region back, and nobody wants to go back. We're all ready to, get businesses all running again and get that revenue cranking, which funds school districts. So I'm very happy. In conclusion, I'm very happy with what the high school has come up with. I want to also give a shout out to the admin union and the teachers union for working so well together to figure out everything that's needed. The bus drivers, and I will finish with this. There was a bus driver who is absolutely amazing. Well, they're all amazing, but I got phone calls that this bus driver literally wrote handwritten messages to Miss May, to all of her students on her bus run. And it was a very, very touching, different letters for each kid. So I called that bus driver just to let her know. And to her, it was the right thing to do. She didn't think that she needed any kind of praise or anything, but she just loves and misses her students like everybody does. So with that, Andy, I believe we can move it on.
All right. Thanks for the report, Tom. We will move into items for discussion and action. Can I get a motion for item H1, approval of the proposed 2020-2021 school district budget proposition?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Fishman with the motion, Mr. McCarthy with the second. Tom, did you or Maureen want to give whatever recap or discussion you want to at this time?
Yeah, Maureen, if I can jump in first, let's just go right to, the elephant in the room, and that is the 3.79 to the tax levy. So I can vouch for every single cabinet member, for all the administrators that worked on this, and for the teachers union. And the thought process is we do not want this to appear like it's a kick in the gut to any taxpayer. What our responsibility is to our community is to make sure that we have an amazing education program. We have, I will say, the very best fine arts and sports program, the very best electives, some amazing things that really enhance the program at Central Square. So what we do know is that there's a 14% decrease to the overall revenue across New York State. With that being said, the governor has come out repeatedly and said, brace for it. Now, the governor's convinced that the president in an election year is going to come in and bail everybody out with $61 billion. The problem with that is and it's a waiting game, we're waiting for that. Regardless, any time that the governor's been asked in any one of his press conferences, he said it's going to be very bad. Like, he's going to have to hit the school districts like never been seen before. And we know that that's going to happen because we know that the revenue, that's a real loss. So $72 on a $100,000 house, which is $144 and $200,000 house, that's going to end up allowing us to have $1,093,000, which is absolutely going to help us because we have no idea. It could be a 5% to a 20% hit to our state aid. I think it's super important that in an $81 million budget at Central Square, 58% of that is state aid. So if we get hit, like he's saying we're going to get hit, that $1,093,000 will help keep our class sizes small. It'll help us keep, like I just said, the continuity of our sports and music programs and all those amazing offerings in the form of electives. To help us brace for what's coming. But Maureen, if you want to jump in and kind of jump into the particulars, go ahead.
I can get into it a little bit, kind of a recap of last week.
Sure.
The overall budget increase is only a 1.51, and that's due to the fact that it does include eliminations and some cuts, which we went through those items last week too, and that whole presentation is on the website and on the budget page. And even with that, we've only got ourselves set up for a state aid reduction of about 3 to 4%. So we're waiting for it. We're trying to prepare for it. But on the flip side of that, politically, they aren't giving us any numbers, and we have to move forward. We can't make the deadlines of the public hearings, the absentee ballot processing, and any of that without adopting a budget number. I think it's basically in between. It has a tax levy, yes, but it's at the property tax cap. And as we discussed before on the last presentation, that's
Yeah.
only the one factor is the levy. The assessments and the
All right, yeah, I got it.
real property, the ORPs won't be in there. So the $72 per 100,000 is the most, and it generally comes out to be less than that. So I think it's a decent number to go out with. We have cuts in there. It's not a large increase on the budget, and it gives us a little bit of leeway for the state aid cuts that are coming. And if they're horrendous, even though we have an approved, hopefully a voter approved dollar amount of expenditure, we won't be able to spend it anyways because we are going to have to make more cuts based on the revenue reductions that potentially are coming our way.
And if I could jump in, we won't have time if the budget were to go down. Again, we're sending out 15,000 absentee ballots to eligible voters. So in my lifetime, I've never done this before. But if it were to go down, there is no time to put up another budget. We would put up a contingency budget. The contingency budget now is not like it was 7 years ago. It can fund athletics, extracurricular. There are some minor little things in there. But looking at it, our biggest hope is that you guys would approve this. It would go out to the public. They would see why we're, the $72 on a $100,000 house, understanding that gives us some control in a situation right now where the governor's not really giving us any control. And that $1,093,000 will really help us with, programmatically for students. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell what it is. We don't want the community. We recognize the hardships that are out there right now. We also understand, what's around the corner, and the fact that 58% of our budget, if they're 58% of the $81 million budget is state aid, and we know that that's going to get whacked. So for us, we had many conversations about this in cabinet, went round and round, and our conclusion was to put that forward with the 3.79.
All right, so we'll open it up for discussion, and I'll start the discussion. And I want to make sure that, first of all, board members never have to, quite frankly, justify their vote or their reasoning. But I want to make sure I articulate why I'm not going to support the budget tonight, because I don't want any community members to misconstrue the fact that I do believe that administration has done a good job of preparing and developing the budget. That is not why I'm not going to support it. It's incredibly difficult times, but there are so many factors that we have to weigh in doing a budget and in voting for a budget. And Mr. Colabufo is right. Their primary role as administration is to deliver the program, the content, right? But as board members, we have to balance even more than that. And people that I've talked to, I simply can't in good conscience pass on a 3.79% tax levy increase in these uncertain times. Again, it's a stacked deck against us, against schools in general. It's going to be very tough. So I don't mean to imply that you haven't done due diligence. I do think that the governor and New York has set us up to be in this position, but in spite of that, I can't support that sort of tax levy increase this year. But that's just my views. I'm certainly not looking to sway anyone's vote. So any other discussion?
Andy, this is Tim. I would just like to publicly say I understand the challenges everybody is facing in this, county, school district, town, state, federal. I just personally, I think it's a rough time not to pass along what we're, able to, just because of the ramifications long term. That $1 million will be over several years, just continues to get larger and larger and larger that we got to make up. So I certainly respect your position, and mine is that I can defend, and I will defend publicly or privately, the work that's been done and why I believe for the future of the students of Central Square, it's the right thing to do at this time. So thank you.
Yep, thanks, Tim. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I am supporting this budget because I have been through a lot of this, being a member of the Board of Education for 20 years. I've been here when the budget has been slashed, when the kids have not had sports, when the kids have not had winter guard, they've not had band. And I will support this budget and support everything that the administration is doing to put this budget out. And I think I'm sure the community will support, or hopefully will support, let's put it that way, of all the things that we've been doing to support families, to support teaching, to support food, milk, everything. I just think we have to do it to prolong, or not to prolong, all of the baloney that could come down the road. And I'm not going to I'm going to fight till the end on this stuff. So that's the way I feel.
All right, any other discussion?
Yeah, I'll just step in. And I've talked to a few people today even, and along the way in the last 3 to 4 weeks about this exact issue. And, you know, I will support the budget tonight on the grounds that there's just so much uncertainty. I don't think this is the time to, you know, pass a 0% increase budget. I just think that it would, I mean, in my opinion, be somewhat fiscally irresponsible with respect to the district. In terms of, you know, we know that we're going to have to make cuts, and we know that we're going to have shortfalls this year. And so to take a year where we know we're already going to be in that position and not take advantage of being able to cut those losses as best as we can and leave it up to the voters, quite frankly. You know, I just, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but you know, we put out this budget, and if it doesn't pass, we are essentially going to end up with a 0% budget. Correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. Sorry, I was
Okay.
muted.
A 0% levy increase.
Right. And so to the extent, you know, the majority, or, you know, how the majority of the taxpayers support, you know, trying to prevent as many cuts as we can, I don't see how it would be fair necessarily to take it out of their hands to have that choice. So, you know, I do, you know, echo Mr. Martin's concerns. And, you know, I have talked to some people about that. And at the end of the day, I just, when you know you're not going to have enough money to, you know, as a district that we're sitting on the board for, and I recognize the obligation to the community members, but at the same time, you know, I recognize the obligation of trying to continue to improve the district and the academic program, and, you know, keep the programs that keep our students in their seats at school and keep their attendance up. And, you know, to risk leaving money on the table, essentially, if the taxpayers want to give it to us. And it's, you know, it's not like any of them are really not going to struggle to do that. I'm sure most of them will, but I think they see the value in doing that. And so at this point, you know, to the extent the coming year becomes less uncertain, you know, I'd certainly support doing that in future years, but I just don't think this year, with all the uncertainty, not knowing if we're going to lose $2 million or $5 million or $7 million out of the budget that we have for the coming school year, I have a hard time not trying to do everything that we can to have as much financial resources at our disposal as possible.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
If I can just add just a little bit to that. In short, in my opinion, is that a good plan has been put forth. A lot of considerations have been taken into account. They are the people that we rely on to make these inputs and come up with these plans. And as long as it's reasonable, I feel strongly that this needs to be put in the hands of the voters. And I think that's really where I'm at. I want the voters to say what they need to say, and whatever that is, then so be it, and we will adapt and overcome.
Thank you, Mr. Loy. Any other discussion?
This is Mrs. Sundet. I just want to say that I do echo the same thing Mr. Laurier stated. Let the people decide. So I will be supporting putting this up for a vote. However, I do want to emphasize that passing this budget does not guarantee that sports and student programs and band music, that kind of stuff, does not guarantee that that won't be cut depending on the severity of the cut to
Right.
state
Right.
aid.
Yep.
So I keep hearing that we're doing it for programs for the kids. However, we need to understand that they may still take a big hit depending on how big the cuts are to state aid.
Right.
That's all I have.
And to piggyback off of Kathy, that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, it's hard for me to justify not putting this out to the voters to the extent that, you know, we do get hit hard, and we are going to have to make substantial cuts to programming and you know, extracurriculars and whatever else comes on the chopping block. But to just leave money that we might have had on the table and not have had to made some of those cuts is, I don't think that that's something that I could support at this time in these uncertain times.
Okay, anyone else? All right, with that, we'll move to the roll call vote. Mr. Martin is a no. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
All right, motion carries, budget passes, and we'll move on to the next item, which is, can I get a motion to accept item H2, the approval of the transportation proposition?
I'll make the motion.
Mrs.
Second.
Fishman with the motion, second by Mr. Loyer. Any discussion on the transportation? All right, being none, Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, oh, sorry, Mrs. Wood,
Mr. Wood is not here, but Mrs. Wood says yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
Motion carries. I'll make a motion for item H3, approval of the refunding bond resolution. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loyer. Any questions, or Maureen, I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to say about this or not?
I just can explain it a little bit. Essentially, what we're doing is refinancing one of our bonds because the interest rates are low right now. Fiscal advisors goes through all the bond issues that are out there, and if it's beneficial to any of the districts, they let us know, and then we get with Ted Trespass, our bond lawyer, and if he thinks it's a go, he lets us know.
Okay, any questions on this?
How much of a savings are we having from that? Do you know off the top of your head, Maureen?
It's that, well, you don't totally know because it goes back to be refunded, but it looks like the projection's about $30,000 to $35,000 a year, and we have about 6 years left on the bond. So it's not like going to save us from anything, but it's not money we want to leave on the table either.
Yeah, I get that. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
Yeah.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt.
Yeah.
Motion carries. I'll make a motion for item H4, the approval of the resolution for the destruction of ballots from last year. Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Loyer. Any discussion on this? All right, being none, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Can I get a motion for item H5, approval of the second reading of proposed district policies?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs.
Second.
Pittman, second by Mr. McCarthy. Any discussion on these? Just, should they pass, they become our policies immediately. So if you have any questions, now's the time. All right, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
All right, the policies are adopted. And then I'll make a motion for item H6, approval of the first reading of district policies. There's only one in this. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion on this policy? All right, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
Motion carries. And at 7:02, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting with the reminder that we do have a meeting next Wednesday. So can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loyer, I believe it was.
Yep.
Any discussion? All right, Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
and Mr. Hoyt. All right, thanks, everyone. Hopefully you can get out, enjoy the sunshine, and have a good night.
Take care, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Mhm.